I'm Ivan Watson in Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine. This is CNN.
There's more breaking news out of Ukraine on a new effort to evacuate civilians trapped in the besieged city of Mariupol. Our senior international correspondent, Ivan Watson, is in southern Ukraine for us. Ivan, the Ukrainian government now estimates that some 100,000 civilians, men, women, and children, are simply trapped in that besieged city of Mariupol, which essentially is already in ruins. Update us on the rather complicated efforts to try to evacuate these people to safety.
Yeah, it is tricky. I mean, the Ukrainian government this morning started by saying that they'd gotten a message via the International Committee of the Red Cross that the Russian military was going to allow evacuations today. So they announced that they were going to have their own ceasefire and send about 45 buses from Zaporizhzhia, where I am now, in the direction of Mariupol. At the end of the day, the Ukrainian government says almost 1,500 people made it out of Mariupol in their own cars, their own private cars, but the buses were held up at a town occupied by the Russians near Mariupol. About 30-plus buses have been held there at the entrance to the town overnight. Another 12 buses, I believe, the Ukrainian government says, were held at another Russian-occupied town called Melitopol, and they had been carrying 14 tons of food and medicine, which the Ukrainian government now accuses the Russian military of confiscating. Meanwhile, the Russian government, the defense ministry, has just announced that it will have another humanitarian corridor evacuation day on April 1st. On Friday, they want it to be organized with the ICRC, the Red Cross, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So there is the chance that more people could emerge on Friday. There is a wrinkle to this story, Wolf, and that is that the leader of one of the Russian-backed separatist regions in the east of the country has announced that he is going to be setting up his own administration to govern Mariupol, which has a number of complicating factors. First, as you mentioned, there are still around 100,000 plus Ukrainian civilians still believed to be trapped in Mariupol. That's one. Number two, there are still Ukrainian troops still controlling part of the city and fighting deadly battles against far greater Russian numbers of military there. And then the third thing is, if in fact he does want to create an administration there, it does look like the first step towards trying to annex Mariupol to a proxy of Russia in Ukraine. That fits a pattern that we've seen in the past here, certainly with the occupation and annexation of Crimea in 2014. Wolf.
All right, be careful over there, Ivan. Thanks very, very much. Ivan Watson reporting now to another war-ravaged city in southern Ukraine. We're joined by the mayor of Mykolaiv, Alexander Sinkevich, who's joining us right now. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. What does the fight look like around Mykolaiv right now? Are you succeeding in pushing the Russians back?
We have some success in pushing them back, but last 2 days we have fights on our skirt of the city. They're trying to attack us, but our troops fighting them, and they fell back. But as you know, I think you heard about it. They used the day before yesterday, the cruise missile, the guided missile that hit into our regional government building, the building of regional administration.
Because the death toll, we understand, has now risen to at least 20 in that Russian strike on Mykolaiv's government building that you're referring to. You say the strike deliberately targeted the governor and the civilians. What are you bracing for as this war now enters week 6?
First of all, I think they lose in their information campaign, and one of our, let's say, first voices is our governor Vitaly Kim, and let's say that that missile was like aimed right into his office. Only 4 people, military people who were as guards and on the first floor, died while this attack. All other people, 17 people that already found bodies of 17 people, and 3 more are missing, were just civilians. And let's say 38 injured people were also civilians, office workers, whose work is to, to work with humanitarian help and with help to refugees.
I know you've said in the past that you started actually preparing for a war years ago. You actually expected a brutal Russian invasion like this would happen at some point. What are you bracing for now? What do you anticipate, Mayor, will happen in the next few days and weeks?
For sure, we are expecting new attacks. We still do these fortifications. We build block posts. We are working with our army to build things that they need now and what they ask us for. And for sure, we let's say back office of our army now.
Mayor Alexander Sinkevich, please be careful over there. Please, we will stay in touch with you, and please pass along our best wishes to all the people who live there, indeed all the people in Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
There's more breaking news coming up next. We have details of Russia's apparent refocus on eastern Ukraine. Is Vladimir Putin looking at a land grab to strengthen his hand in negotiations? More now on the breaking news. Relentless Russian shelling of key Ukrainian cities despite Moscow's promise to reduce attacks. Let's take a closer look at the situation with CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Colonel, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, the senior U.S. defense official has told CNN that the Russians are now focusing in on 4 specific areas: Kyiv, Chernihiv, Izium, and the Donbas region. Tell us why the Russians seem to be targeting these areas with major air power.
Absolutely, Wolf. Here's the major deal here. So, of course, we have Kyiv right here. That's the capital of Ukraine. We have Izium right here. We have the Donbas. We have Kharkiv, and we have Chernihiv right here. So these areas, plus that you've mentioned here, are the ones that they are looking at because they believe that the Russians believe that they can take this area using air power and rocket strikes alone. This makes more sense for them to do than to use their armed forces, which of course have gotten into a lot of trouble with all the different perturbations that they've had getting from A to B when it comes to their convoys that didn't work, their personnel that didn't obey orders, and the other things that have become problems that way.
As you know, the Polish Prime Minister said today that he thinks what the Russians want to do is to take over about a third of Ukraine right now in order to strengthen their hand in potential negotiations. Tell us why they would go for this area, and do they even have the capability to do this?
So that's a really interesting question, Wolf. The area that they're talking about here is actually the Donbas region. And if you take a look at this line, you'll see that part of this line is actually not covered by Russian troops or their separatist partners. So what the Russians want to do is they want to take this area right in here into Kramatorsk and beyond Donetsk. That also gives them added areas behind Mariupol, that area that has been affected so much by the devastation that we've seen in all the reports that we've had from the scene there. So this is about a third, a little less than a third of the country. They could move that out a little bit further this way. Regardless, this would be the area of eastern Ukraine that they would take a look at and they would want to grab because it is Russian populated and it is also an area that is very rich agriculturally and industrially.
You know, it's interesting that the Russians apparently have decided to withdraw from the Chernobyl nuclear facility that's not very far away from Kyiv. Tell us about that.
Yes, Wolf. The area there in just north of Kyiv, this is Chernobyl. And this is, of course, the scene of the nuclear devastation in 1986 when the reactor actually malfunctioned and radiation spread throughout large portions of Europe. Well, what has happened here is that Russian troops have come in, they have gone into this area, they've occupied parts of it, and they have actually been affected by some of the radiation potentially, and that was perhaps the reason that they moved, because of potential radiation effects to their health and also their inability to really move the Ukrainians out of there.
Colonel Cedric Leighton, as usual, thank you very, very much for that explanation. There's more breaking news we're following. New details just coming in about what President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, told the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. We'll have details for you. Plus, Chris Rock breaking his silence on the Oscars, slapped, seen, and heard around the world.